Hi, thanks for joining us for this conversation about where we are coming out of the pandemic. You'll see that I am sitting down. One, I'm glad after the adventure of all of this past year just to have a minute to sit down. What a year it has been. We've been dealing with stuff that no one was prepared to deal with and no one knew how to deal with. And we learned a lot. Some of it good, some of it not so good. But we have learned a lot over this past year or so. So let's kind of go back and do a brief kind of blow over of this past year or so as we have dealt with COVID. uh, January, February of 2020, uh, things were going extremely well. We had strong attendance. All of our numbers were up. Everything was going well. Then we had a tornado. It hit East Nashville. Our church responded, and we saw a lot of good things happen in the East Nashville community, centered out of the ministry of Lockland Community. And the Lockland Springs Church, in a lot of ways, was ordained by the East Nashville community and got a lot of validity. You are now our church, you're now our community church, and a lot of good things happened out of that very very tough several hours when the tornado hit. Lockland Springs was able to take care of their neighbors. They were able to be the center for a lot of care going out. Everybody who was working to repair and recover Nashville ended up meeting in the courtyard there at Lockland Springs. So Lockland Springs literally became the center of all of the repair and restoration that was happening in East Nashville. God did some good things in a very, very tough moment in the history of Nashville. The COVID numbers spiked, and we went into a series of lockdowns. Now, you'll remember the governor came to us. Federal leaders were telling us we need to flatten the curve and we need 2 weeks for everybody to stay home. 2 weeks turned into a month into 3 months, 3 months into a year. We shut down Brentwood Baptist Church for almost an entire year, and it was devastating in all kinds of ways. One, we don't know how to do church when we don't meet. The thing that would define a church would be, well, we get together once a week or so. Pastoral care, how we stayed in touch with our members, all of that had to be rethought and redone. Literally on a Friday morning, the leadership of our church is sitting in my office, and we're making a decision on whether or not to have church on that Sunday morning. We ended up not having in-person services, and I want to take a moment now and celebrate our communications team and our tech team, who literally made online church happen in about 48 hours. They got better every week. They learned something new every week. And we were able to have very effective online services throughout the duration of the pandemic. I am very, very grateful for the hard work, the creativity, and the high impact energy that the team brought to this moment. We did some really good work. So much so that one of the things that we're finding out coming out of COVID is a lot of you like the online service. And it won't be soon, if ever, that some of you come back for a live worship service. It just works for you and your family. Some of you are newlyweds and you get up and cuddle up on the couch and you watch the service together. Some of you are empty nesters and you get up, you have your coffee, you sit on the couch together and you watch the service. You're still in your small group, you're still involved in a mission project, you're doing a lot of things, and you consider yourself a fully engaged member of Brentwood Baptist Church. You're just not here on Sunday. That's a new reality that we're trying to figure out what to do with. And what I mean by that is we've never dealt with this. We've never dealt with a member who watches online. Now, I know we've got a lot of discussion about online church, but we can't figure out what to do with it. Now, what's interesting is all of the experts that I usually call are now calling me going, how are you guys handling the pandemic? What are you doing? And so everybody is as confused and as befuddled as I am. Here's what we have learned and kind of what we're figuring out. One, the pandemic did not break anything. It did show us what was broken. And the change that we thought would happen over the next 5 to 10 years is happening over the next 1 to 2 years. It has sped up change and put a lot of different pressure on all kinds of systems. Now, here's the reality. There are some churches that will not survive this. They were struggling going into the pandemic. The quarantine was that last straw on the camel's back that pushed them over the edge. So there's going to be a lot of opportunity for us to engage with struggling congregations and revision with them and repurpose with them toward our goal of 100 healthy congregations throughout Middle Tennessee. There'll be others who recognize that the community has changed. Every night we hear on the news about the numbers of people who are coming in to our community. These people are very different than the traditional people who move into Nashville. They're coming from California. They're coming from Illinois. They're coming from Massachusetts. They're coming from Colorado. They're even coming here from Florida. Now, what have I just told you if you're an old-time Southern Baptist like me? When you hear those states, California, Illinois, Colorado, Massachusetts, what do you think? Well, if you're as old as I am, you think pioneer states. Pioneer states were those states where we didn't have a whole lot of Southern Baptists. And every year we'd hear from the North American Mission Board about how we need to work harder to start churches in this area where there aren't many churches. Now, all of those people, California, Colorado, Illinois, Massachusetts, they're all moving to Nashville, here. Now, they're moving here because they like the climate. They're moving here because they like the cost of living. They're living here because they like the school systems. They're moving here because they got a good job here. They like the pace of living. They like what you can do in Nashville. They like that you can live in the country a few minutes out of Nashville. So there's a lot of attractive things. All the things that you and I take for granted, they're just now discovering. But these new people who are moving in aren't moving in and looking for a church. Now, again, if you grew up like I did as a Southern Baptist, the first thing you do is you look around your neighborhood for the nearest Southern Baptist church and you look to get engaged. These people are not looking to get engaged in the church. So we're going to have to be much more aggressive, much more thoughtful and intentional about how we engage our neighbors. We're going to have to think just like missionaries think if we were in a non-Christian country somewhere around the world. We're going to have to learn their language. We're going to have to learn their culture. We're going to have to learn where their heartache is, where their needs are, so our church can best respond to them and sharing the gospel to them. It is an entirely different challenge coming out of the new political realities of our nation as well as the pandemic. So there's a different kind of challenge for us, for all of us. Now, what else have we figured out? We have figured out that about 80% of what we do doesn't make any difference. Now, over the year or so that we were in quarantine, here's the calls I got. I got calls about when can we worship together. People miss gathering to worship. I got calls about small groups. When can our group get back together? We hate Zoom. I got calls about funerals or weddings, usually in frustration. What do you mean I cannot have mama's funeral in the church? And, we couldn't have groups of over 25 or whatever for a funeral service for several months. And so that caused a lot of heartache with different people. And we certainly understand their frustration. But everything else, I didn't hear about. Nobody complained about it. Okay. Now, I did have some parents call and say, when are we going to let the kids come back to church? Because I've got to take these kids somewhere. but it was more or less a threat of somebody's going to jail if I don't take my kids to church. It wasn't a concern about their spiritual growth. Everybody was just tired of being at home together. And man, we got that. We put our families under a lot of pressure during this quarantine time. Let's face it, we were working at home. We were trying to do homeschooling. We were trying to keep kids entertained as well as inside. And everybody was scared and panicked, and it made for a frustrating time. So what are we finding out? One, we're going to spend as much effort and energy as we need to make worship as meaningful for you as we possibly can. We understand this is a priority for you and any of your neighbors who are looking for a church home. We are going to make small groups. Now, it can be a Sunday school class. It can be a group that meets in your home, a nearby coffee shop. We're going to make small groups a priority. That's where discipleship happens. When you have serious men and women who are serious about the faith, engaged in a conversation and study about, here's how Christ is dealing with me. How is he dealing with you? Here's what I'm learning. What are you learning? That's where that iron sharpening iron happens. We cannot back away from this emphasis. We need it now more than ever. The next thing is, all of you are called to a ministry, called to a mission. And we want to work as hard as we can to help you find that calling, to help you find that missionary moment. That way, we want you coming to worship, celebrating what you have seen God do in and through you in your own ministry, and anticipating what God will do in the coming week. So you're going to see us simplify our focus, but intensify the energy that we put behind these 3 or 4 things. Now, that means there are going to be a lot of things that we don't do anymore. Yeah, we don't do them. If you and your group of families want to do them, that's great. Knock yourself out. But what we're finding out as a church is that we have a handful of priorities, and I literally mean a handful of priorities that make the biggest difference in your life and the life of our church and the life of our community. So that's where we're headed. We're going to do those things, and we're going to do them extremely well to the best of our ability. Everybody in the group, everybody on mission. Everybody in a small group. Now, if you're like me and you're kind of thinking, I don't know about a small group, that's probably the first sign that you should be leading one. Okay? If you don't like going to them, it's probably because you're called to lead them. So pray. Ask the Lord to tell you, who are those 3 or 4 people around your life? Who are those 3 or 4 couples who are in you and your family's life that would get together in your home, in some nearby neighbor's home, and then you could study the Bible together? Call me. I'll help you get that study started. Let us know. We'll give you the training you need to get that started and work with you and walk with you every step of that way. Okay? So that's where it's going to happen. And we don't want to do anything at the church that would cause you not to be able to do this kind of Bible study in your home. That's the priority. Now, you want to know about some other stuff. Hey, all of our campuses are doing well. Our system was tested. All of our campuses are healthy. Attendance is coming back. Giving is strong. I'm very proud of the leadership of every one of our campus pastors. If you go to any one of our campuses, you're going to hear some very, very good preaching, and you're going to see some life-changing ministry. It's an exciting thing to be part of. The Rowan Glenn Center for Special Needs will be coming online the end of this year. They're saying end of October, 1st of November. You know how that goes. It's going to be the end of November, 1st of December. But you can anticipate that we will probably be doing the official grand opening of the Rowan Glenn Center sometime right after the first of year in 2022. So that is coming online. We are making plans now to how we can engage other churches, other opportunities, so we can be part of 100 healthy congregations throughout Middle Tennessee. Now, I've told you this before. When I put that number up on the board, when we were brainstorming, we want to do 100 congregations. I thought to myself, okay, that's kind of exciting. That's a big number. If we get 80, that'll be great. If we get 75, that'll be wonderful. But let me tell you what's happened since we put that number on the board. We have had people call us, will you work with us? We've had people call us and say, hey, we live in this area, but there's no church. Will you come plant a church here? We've worked with different ethnic groups who are starting churches, who would need our support and who would want our encouragement, who would want a relationship with us. So much so that we're now beginning to talk about a church network that would spread across the Middle Tennessee area, maybe even further across Tennessee and even the United States. So we could be training pastors, training leaders, anticipating where churches will need to be planted, training a pastor to plant that church, and then working with them to plant that church, that plant into a successful congregation. McDonald's is pretty good at this. McDonald's knows where the next McDonald's is going to be. And they have a plan where they can put a McDonald's just about anywhere and sell hamburgers. We ought to be that good at starting a church. We ought to know where the growth's going to be. We ought to know where the people are, the kind of people they are, so we can hire a pastor and train a pastor who matches that people group. We ought to be as good at starting churches, reaching communities, as McDonald's is in making hamburgers. This is an exciting thing, and I want to tell you, we're going to get to 100 churches. We're going to get to 100 churches faster than I ever thought we would, certainly faster than most of you thought we would. But that is happening. Now, let me remind you, all of this happens because of your engagement. Now, when you hear me talk about engagement, you usually roll your eyes and go, okay, Mike wants money. No, I don't want money. I want all your money. I want to be honest with you. I want all your money. We've got things we can do, from planning the leadership center to working with these churches. God is opening up door after door for us, and we need to have the resources to be able to answer boldly when God gives us those chances. But I want more than that. I want you. I want your creativity. I want your imagination. I want your insight. I want your teaching. Some of you will be pastors of these church plants. Some of you will be the worship leaders. Some of you will be the disciple leaders. Some of you will be starting nonprofits to do everything from feed the hungry to provide tutoring services in local schools. You've been called to do something significant for the kingdom of God, to be involved with Jesus in redeeming that part of the broken world where he's put you, to bring it back under the lordship of Christ, back into the kingdom of God, also we can celebrate his glory. So what's the state of Brentwood Baptist Church? It's good. It really is. We have come through the pandemic as strong, if not stronger, than anybody I know. Attendance is picking back up. Giving is picking back up. All of the things that you want to measure a church by, we're doing great. We're going to do better because everything we have been through has been preparation for what God wants to do next. And that is going to be the most exciting part of Brentwood's history that we've ever been part of.